Part 12. I have been forced to agree as Bai Xuelan's adjutant. Bai Xuelan sent someone to call Adjutant's son, smiled and pointed at Xuan Huaifeng on the bed. Huaifeng promised to serve me here. And he is also an adjutant. He can probably help you with some of the burden in the future. Adjutant's son was at the customs office. The commander-in-chief worked as a clerk. And he caught Bai Xuelan's eye. Naturally, he was extremely smart. Hearing Bai Xuelan's words, and looking at Xuan Huaifeng's anger and hatred, he was so full of words that he couldn't say it. He must have guessed it. They were inseparable from each other, and they didn't bring out the face at all. He welcomed them and said, "I really can't ask for it. Adjutant Xuan's knowledge is incomparable to me. I will ask for more advice in the future. After consulting Bai Xuelan, why don't I ask someone to prepare a uniform for Adjutant Xuan? It will take a few days for a tailor to make it." Bai Xuelan said, "Of course the clothes are made, but that's not urgent. Adjutant Xuan is sick. Now, you don't have to rush him to work. Just take care of his body first." After saying the words, Adjutant Xuan, he found it interesting himself. The corners of his lips were slightly hooked up. And he glanced at Xuan Huaifeng on the bed. Bai Xuelan said to Adjutant's son, "You take care of it here first." He left Adjutant's son to watch Xuan Huaifeng. He left the room by himself. Went into the study, rang the bell, called the housekeeper in, and ordered, "You go. Call everyone in the mansion to the backyard." The housekeeper asked, "Should you just call all the maids in the mansion? Or even the guards?" Bai Xuelan said, "Call them all. And the doctor who was invited will also be invited last night." The housekeeper agreed and went out to do it. Bai Xuelan waited for the housekeeper to leave and went to the cashier in person. Not long after, the clerks, the concierge, the driver, the old mother, the young maid, and the guards in the mansion were all called to the backyard to wait. Wu Ying pressed a group of people, looked over by the pond, and occupied the rockery to the small stone bridge. Everyone had doubts and anxiety on their faces. When I asked the housekeeper also looked puzzled. The chief didn't say anything else, just wait anyway. Everyone waited for about 10 minutes before they saw Bai Xuelan walking in from the crescent gate, with two accountants following behind. One person was holding a small wooden box in his hand, and everyone was silent. Bai Xuelan asked the housekeeper, "Everyone is here?" The housekeeper said, "Only Adjutant's son. He said to take care of." Bai Xuelan said, "I know this, I asked him to take care of Huaifeng. Everyone else it's all right when we arrive." After speaking, he walked to the steps under the eaves. Went up 2 steps, stood there unrestrainedly, and looked around slowly, his eyes twinkling. Everyone was nervous for no reason, fearing that something bad might happen. Everyone stood with their hands down and waited for him to speak, and the guards also stood at attention. The exquisite and spacious backyard was suddenly silent. Only then did Bai Xuelan smile lightly. "Why are you so sullen? I asked the housekeeper to call you here, not to find fault with everyone, but to reward everyone. Since I took office, I have been busy with everything, and the clerks are waiting for you. Yes, the guards are also doing their best to protect. Everyone is very good." He called everyone over in such a solemn way. But the opening was like a spring breeze, giving birth to a trace of excited anticipation. Bai Xuelan said, "I, Bai Xuelan, are very well known to everyone. I never treat my people badly. And I never write empty checks. Since it is a reward, I must show some sincerity to everyone." He nodded. The 2 accountants, one surnamed Zhang and the other Huang, took advantage of his free time to move a small table out of the door, and placed the 2 small boxes on it, watching Bai Xuelan's gesture solemnly. "Open a small box. Take out the banknotes from the account book, press the book, and call out their names one by one. Zhao Sanfu. Here. Come here, get $500. Want banknotes or cash? From the box. Shenyang, which was wrapped in a bundle of banknotes and several spools of sandpaper, was taken out and placed heavily on the table. When a name is called, a person will come up, receive the money, and sign on the account book. If you can't write your name, you just put a red fingerprint on it. The doctor was also specially invited by the housekeeper and stood aside. Bai Xuelan asked them to collect the money. He walked up to the doctor and said kindly, "You have been affected by what happened last night. This is the consultation fee." He took out a written note from his pocket and handed it to the doctor. The doctor thought that Bai Xuelan would not be stingy when rewarding someone with such a generous hand, and he would not be stingy with the consultation fee. With a smile in his pocket, he said, "It's not easy for me to interfere with you when you are dealing with family affairs here. Allow me to say goodbye first." Bai Xuelan said, "No hurry. There are still a few things that I would like to ask you to discuss together." The doctor asked, "What to discuss?" Bai Xuelan smiled incomprehensibly. "It's a trivial matter." He asked the doctor to wait in the backyard first, then turned around and picked a stone pier near the pond to be comfortable. He sat down peacefully, leaned the back of his head against the scarlet wooden pillar and closed his eyes. After waiting for a while, the accountant Huang came to report and said, "Chief, the money has been paid. Please instruct me." Bai Xuelan opened his eyes, calmed down, stood up slowly, and returned to the steps to stand. The guards and servants who entered the scene were all beaming, holding the newly issued banknotes or foreign money in their hands, and looking up at Bai Xuelan. Their eyes were shining. Bai Xuelan swept the group and asked them, "Are you happy or not? These people worked hard for a month, and they were only paid 10 yuan at most. Now they have 500 yuan out of thin air. How can they be unhappy?" The people below didn't dare to be too presumptuous, and when they heard him ask such a question, they couldn't help but burst into laughter. A daring guard said from below, "Chief, why can't you be unhappy? Anyway, if you want your brothers' lives in the future, we will sacrifice it for you." Immediately, a bunch of loyal voices came out. Bai Xuelan chuckled and said to the guard, "Okay, you are a man who knows how to repay your kindness." He turned his head and said to the accountant Huang, "Open the box and reward him with a gold bar." Open a box, but another box is always locked. The yellow accountant opened the other box, and it looked like a whole box of bright gold bars. Stunned everyone, and their eyes were bigger than copper bells. The yellow accountant took out a gold bar, asked the guard to come over, put a fingerprint on the booklet, and gave the gold bar to him. The guard held the gold bar in disbelief and nearly fell over as he walked back to the crowd. Bai Xuelan looked down at the crowd and said quietly, "You probably envy him very much. But if you say a word, you will get a gold bar. Why don't you say that? There is always a time to earn gold bars when doing things below." As I said, Bai Xuelan, don't treat my people badly." Saying that, he restrained his smile, showing a chilling calmness on his face. "I understand that there are many people out there who want to inquire about the Commissioner of Customs. And these people usually like to sneak a little money for the servants to check other people's affairs. The privacy of the home is filthy and despicable. Some people are coveting this a little cheap. And for a little profit, they sell the host's house. Such people, when they were placed in the Yongzheng period of the Qing dynasty, were steamed alive in a hot pot. Yes, if it falls into my hands, I can't spare him. Today, I will make it clear that if there was a leak in the past, I will forgive it. From today, anyone who dares to tell the inside of the mansion will betray me." After a pause, Bai Xuelan glanced at the bottom and asked, "You probably think that I use power to overwhelm people. What I said is actually the way of a gentleman. You have to say something first." And you will know the boundaries when you do things with each other in the future. If someone is not convinced, I'll tell you when I will. I'm not surprised. I'll give you 3 months' wages immediately, and then write you a letter of recommendation to recommend you to another mansion, and the wages won't be less than now. How? Everyone flinched for a while. You look at me, I look at you, and they all said, this also makes sense. I'm not dissatisfied. Who doesn't hate those who talk about talking outside? I can't say if I ask. Okay, then we have decided on this gentleman's alliance. Bai Xuelan said lightly, stretched out a finger, pointed to the booklet in the accountant's hand, and said, those who have received money today have drawn a deposit on this booklet, which is the proof of our agreement. After speaking, he walked to the table again, and lifted the lid of the wooden box again, revealing the full of a box of gold bars. He patted the heartwarming treasures of gold bars and said, you will live up to me, and I will not let you down. These gold bars are reserved for you. Today, the soldier said a word and got a gold bar. You can follow his example in the future. If you find someone who has said something about the mansion, come to me, send a letter, and you can get a gold bar for your effort. Everyone was excited and fearful at the same time, thinking that there was a gold bar as a reward. It was like setting up a spy surveillance network. Whoever dares to talk about the mansion indiscriminately, in the future, even if you talk in your sleep, you have to be careful. Repeatedly nodding yes. Seeing that the internal processing had been completed, Bai Xuelan made a gesture to the housekeeper to let everyone disperse. He walked up to the doctor and said with a smile, ashamed for making you wait for a long time. You see us as officials, you always think that we are relaxed and comfortable, but when you have a lot of headaches, it takes a long time to clean up just a little housework. The doctor looked in this good show. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead long ago, and he squeezed a smile embarrassedly and said, don't dare, don't dare. What else do you want to tell me? In today's chaotic world, robbers are everywhere, so a box of gold bars can buy his life dozens of times. Bai Xuelan said, oh, and patted his forehead. I had something to discuss, but after thinking about it, it's not a big deal. I won't say anything about the little things that are as big as sesame seeds. I've delayed you for a day, please go back and rest early. Let's go. He called the clerk to come over and prepare a car to take the doctor back. The doctor walked away with a check in his arms. Bai Xuelan stood in the backyard, stretched, turned around and entered the room, picked up the phone. Hello, is this Nian's house? I'm looking for Mrs. Nian. After waiting for a while, Xuan Huaifeng's voice came from the phone. Bai Xuelan pointed into the microphone and said in a pleasant but somewhat low tone, Mrs. Nian, my people have found Huaifeng, and he has been taken to the mansion by me. But something happened. The details are still, so please you can talk about it when you arrive at my mansion. Nian Home's car was called away by Nian Liangfu. Xuan Huaifeng received a call and hurriedly called a rickshaw. After getting in the car, I said the address, and kept urging the driver to go quickly, promising to give more money for the car. When she arrived at the entrance of the White Mansion, she threw down a $2 bill and hurried inside, not hearing the driver happily thanking her from behind. The servant led her into the mansion, and Bai Xuelan had already received the news and went out to the front hall steps to welcome her. As soon as they met, Xuan Huaifeng couldn't help but asked anxiously, Mr. Bai, have you found Huaifeng? What happened? Is he okay? He went inside and said comfortingly, Mrs. Nian, don't worry, let me tell you the matter slowly. After a pause, he said, my man found Huaifeng in a small hotel. He drank the water from the smoked soil. What? Xuan Huaifeng stopped abruptly, her face turning pale. Seeing that she was about to faint, Bai Xuelan quickly helped her to sit down on a chair in the living room, asked someone to bring hot tea, and said softly to her, Mrs. Nian, don't be panicked. Someone has saved him, so he survived. Huaifeng probably just heard people say that smoked soil water is poisonous. Only then did her eyes slowly recover, looked at Bai Xuelan, and said, "My God. This child, is he killing me? To do such a thing?" Bai Xuelan said, "He is arrogant and proud." The Lin family was angry to him, and he was confused for a while. Now that he wakes up, he feels very regretful. "I would like to ask you to wait until you see him, and don't embarrass him." Xuan Dayan's face had a trace of desolation, and she sighed softly. "It's enough that he doesn't embarrass me. And I dare to embarrass him? If he really has 3 strengths and 2 weaknesses, how can I go to see my underground mother?" After a while, she wiped her tears with a handkerchief, raised her head and said, "Chief Pai, please take me to see him. I will take him home to take care of. In any case, this time, I must take good care of him and let him not have any accident." Bai Xuelan asked, "You want to take care of him? Will Huaifeng bring back Nian's house?" Xuan Dayan. "Of course." Bai Xuelan fell silent. Xuan Dayan was a little puzzled. "Is there anything you don't want to say about your expression? It seems that he is not very happy at home." Xuan Dayan was stunned for a moment, but she quickly realized that she bowed her head in embarrassment, and said in a low voice, "His brother-in-law is often drunk recently, and sometimes his words are unpleasant." Bai Xuelan said understandingly, "I know the person of Director Nian. He is capable in business, but he has some small problems in personal life. It's not that I take the liberty to ask about other people's family affairs, but Huaifeng is my old friend. I just rescued him from somewhere else, and seeing him like this made me feel very uncomfortable. After he woke up, I talked to him, and he seemed to be having a bad time recently. I really don't want to go back to Nian's house." Xuan Dayan asked in surprise, "What do you mean?" Bai Xuelan looked at her with earnest eyes. "I wouldn't say this on weekdays. Having suffered a lot of setbacks, now is the time when he needs to rest the most. When he returns to the old house, I am afraid that he will be depressed again. If you don't mind, I ask you to stay with me and recuperate for a while." Xuan Dayan thought. After thinking about it, she shook her head and said, "I understand your kindness. There are indeed some contradictions in the family. Sigh, I'm really ashamed to talk about these things. But what is it to put him here with you? Even though he is a friend, he can't let him go. Huaifeng bothers you like this. After all, I have to take care of him myself so that I can rest assured." "Mrs. Nian, it's not right for you to say that," Bai Xuelan said sternly. "The meaning of friends is to help each other. Why did Huaifeng come out? Can't stay in my mansion because of the accident? Don't you think I'm like Lin Qijun? That's not what I meant. I just stayed in someone else's house for no reason. Of course it's not for no reason. First of all, we are friends. Second, Huaifeng has already agreed to be my adjutant. Even if he doesn't need to rest, he will still live in my mansion after taking office." Xuan Dayan was surprised. "What did you say?" Huaifeng replied, "Should be your adjutant?" Bai Xuelan nodded and sighed. "Among our friends, he used to value Lin Qijun the most, so he was reluctant to associate with others. After this incident, he may have seen it a bit more. I am sincere. I talked to him about his future plans, and he finally agreed to serve as an adjutant temporarily and be my helper. Naturally, with his talent. I also know that being an adjutant wronged him, and when he has some experience, I will recommend him." Huaifeng was finally willing to seek a job in the government, and as soon as he entered, he was the deputy chief of customs, which was really good news for Xuan Dayan. What she felt most distressed about was that her pampered younger brother was angry everywhere. Now that her younger brother has become Bai Xuelan's adjutant, who would dare to show his face? The kid finally got it. She originally planned to insist on her brother coming home. But now she changed her mind immediately, and after thinking for a while, she nodded and said, "Since that's the case, I'll hand him over to you. Chief Pai, he's here with you, just please take care. For the sake of friendship in the past, if there is something wrong, just teach him." Two jade hands held Bai Xuelan's hand. Bai Xuelan clenched her hand and said, "Don't worry. I will treat him as my own family." Xuan Huaifeng was grateful and said, "Where is he? Can I see him now?" "Of course. He is in the guest room at the back of the courtyard." Bai Xuelan led the way and brought Xuan Huaifeng into the room. Adjutant Sun had been accompanying Xuan Huaifeng in the room. When he saw them coming, he stood up to say hello and left with a sense of humor. Xuan Huaifeng was lying on the bed. When he heard the movement, he turned his head and suddenly saw his sister coming. He turned over and sat up in a hurry. Pulling the wound on his body, the pain on his face was unbearable. Bai Xuelan stepped up with a single step. "You are recovering from illness. What are you doing sitting up? Are you uncomfortable again? Lie down quickly." He gently supported his shoulders, made him lie back on the pillow, turned his head and said softly to Xuan Huaifeng, "He just threw up a lot, and now his stomach hurts when he moves." Xuan Huaifeng saw her younger brother lying weakly on the bed. Her eyes were already red, and she couldn't cry in front of outsiders. She wiped the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief, took a few steps forward, and sat down beside the bed. After watching Xuan Huaifeng for a long time, with a little choking, she said softly, "Who will not be wronged in life? Why are you so confused? If something really happened, would it make my sister cry?" Xuan Huaifeng, listening to Xuan Huaifeng's words, he felt extremely ashamed, not knowing how much she knew, so he glanced at Bai Xuelan worriedly. Standing behind Xuan Huaifeng, Bai Xuelan smiled at Xuan Huaifeng and gave you a reassuring look. Xuan Huaifeng turned his eyes back to his sister again, and said uncomfortably, "Sister, don't cry." Xuan Huaifeng was also afraid that she couldn't help scolding him, and she scolded Huaifeng so much that she didn't dare to go deeper. She scolded, squeezed out a little smile, and said, "If you want me to stop crying, you should be a little more sensible. However, I think it's a blessing in disguise. You're angry and confused once, and it's time to grow up." The chief said, "You are going to be his adjutant, and I am very relieved to hear that." Xuan Huaifeng's heart trembled slightly, and he looked at Bai Xuelan with his eyes. Bai Xuelan stared at him threateningly, and said in a pleasant tone, "Huaifeng, when I saw your sister, I couldn't help but say it. Your sister is also very happy for you." Xuan Huaifeng said, "People are willing to give you such an opportunity, you have to cherish it. The ancients said that the grace of a drop of water should be repaid by a spring. In the future, you can work diligently for Chief Pai, and don't let others down." Xuan Huaifeng had no choice but to bite the bullet and said, "Sister, I know." Xuan Huaifeng sighed, "You know. Chief Pai is the noble person in your life. If you stay with him, I won't worry for you either." She asked a lot of questions about what was wrong with his body and told him a lot. Bai Xuelan was always with him in the room. Xuan Huaifeng stayed by Xuan Huaifeng's side for 2 or 3 hours, and in the end, she had to get up and say goodbye despite being very reluctant. Before leaving, Xuan Huaifeng took Xuan Huaifeng's hand and said, "You need to get better soon. My sister feels distressed when I see this. I'm leaving. And I'll see you tomorrow." Xuan Huaifeng was reluctant to leave. Xuan Huaifeng was even more worried that his sister and Bai Xuelan would get too close and would fall into Bai Xuelan's trap. So he went against her wish and said, "Please don't have to come tomorrow. The doctor said that my health will not be in the way. I'll be fine soon." Xuan Huaifeng said, "I won't come to see. How can I be at ease?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "This is the chief's mansion, and many people are staring here. I will be Bai Xuelan's adjutant in the future. Here it's also a place of work. If an adjutant's sister often comes to the mansion where he works, it's easy to fall into trouble. I'm new here. And I don't want to do this. Xuan Dian was relieved that her younger brother would actually consider these worldly stories. She thought for a while, then nodded and said, "What you said makes sense, but I can always call and ask, right?" Bai Xuelan smiled and said, "Of course, you can make a phone call. Not only that, but I will also wait for Huaifeng to settle down. I will personally send a car and take him to Nian's house for you to take a look at." Xuan Dian said, "It would be better if this is true." She said goodbye and left. Bai Xuelan didn't want to appear too attentive. He took his measure and sent Xuan Dian to the front steps of the court and stopped.